The morning sun cast long shadows across Fort Harrison, a sprawling military base nestled in the hills of rural Virginia. Staff Sergeant Rebecca Martinez laced up her combat boots in the dim light of the barracks, her movements precise and practiced. At 28 she had already served 3 tours overseas, but to her fellow soldiers she was still just the girl trying to play soldier. "Hey Martinez, you sure you can handle today's exercise?" Sergeant Mike Thompson called out from across the room, his voice dripping with mockery. "We're doing real combat training, not the kiddie stuff." Rebecca didn't look up from her boots, she'd heard it all before. At 5 feet 4 inches and weighing barely 130 pounds, she didn't fit the image of what most people thought a soldier should look like. Her quiet demeanor and careful speech only seemed to fuel their assumptions that she was weak. "I'll manage," she replied simply, standing and adjusting her gear. Thompson laughed, turning to his buddy Corporal Jack Williams. "She manage, she says. I give her 10 minutes before she's crying for mummy." The other soldiers in the barracks chuckled. Rebecca had earned their respect in small ways over the years, but there was always an undercurrent of doubt. They saw her clean record, her consistent performance, but somehow it never seemed enough. She was too quiet, too small, too different from what they expected. Lieutenant Colonel David Harper entered the barracks, his presence immediately commanding attention. A tall man with graying temples and sharp eyes, he'd been running Fort Harrison for 3 years. His gaze swept the room before landing on Rebecca. "Martinez, your team leader for today's exercise," he announced. The room fell silent. Thompson's jaw dropped. "Sir, with all due respect, shouldn't someone with more experience lead the team?" Harper's eyes narrowed. "Are you questioning my judgment, Thompson?" "No, sir, but Martinez has more combat experience than half this room combined. She's leading Alpha Team through the forest survival and rescue simulation. Thompson, Williams, Rodriguez, and Patterson, you're with her." As Harper left, the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. Thompson glared at Rebecca. "This is going to be a disaster," he muttered. Rebecca gathered her team outside the barracks. The 4 men stood before her, their body language clearly showing their reluctance to follow her lead. Corporal Luis Rodriguez, normally friendly, avoided eye contact. Private Danny Patterson, the youngest of the group, looked nervous. "All right, listen up," Rebecca began, her voice steady despite the hostile atmosphere. "Today's exercise simulates a behind-the-lines rescue mission. We have 6 hours to navigate 15 miles of dense forest, locate 3 wounded soldiers, played by instructors, and extract them to the safe zone." "Yeah, we know what the exercise is," Thompson interrupted. "Question is, do you?" Rebecca continued as if he hadn't spoken. "The terrain is rough. We'll face simulated enemy fire, obstacles, and weather conditions. Stay alert, follow protocol, and watch each other's backs." Williams snorted. "Easy for you to say. You'll probably be hiding behind a tree while we do the real work." Something flickered in Rebecca's eyes, but her voice remained calm. "Let's move out." The team entered the forest, their equipment heavy on their backs. The Virginia woods were thick with underbrush, the canopy above blocking out most of the sunlight. Rebecca took point, reading the terrain with practiced ease. She'd grown up in these mountains, hunting with her father since she was 12. Every broken branch, every disturbed patch of earth told her a story. An hour into the exercise, they encountered their first challenge. A steep ravine blocked their path, its walls slick with morning dew. The safe route would add 2 hours to their journey. "We go round," Thompson declared, taking charge despite Rebecca's position as team leader. "Negative," Rebecca said firmly. "We can rappel down and climb up the other side. Save us 2 hours." "That's insane," Williams protested. "The rocks are wet. It's too dangerous." "It's the smart play," Rebecca insisted. "I'll go first to secure the lines." Thompson stepped closer, his voice low and threatening. "Listen, little girl, this isn't one of your video games. People could get hurt following your crazy ideas." "I'm the team leader," Rebecca replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "We're doing this." She secured the rappelling gear with expert hands, testing each knot twice. The descent was treacherous, but she made it look easy. One by one, the others followed, grumbling but unable to deny her skill. But at the bottom of the ravine, Rodriguez approached her. "That was pretty impressive," he admitted quietly. Rebecca nodded acknowledgement but didn't smile. She'd learned not to celebrate small victories. There would always be another test, another chance for them to find her lacking dot as they continued through the forest. Rebecca's knowledge of the terrain became increasingly valuable. She led them around hidden obstacles, found fresh water sources, and navigated by landmarks the others would have missed. Slowly, Almost reluctantly, the team began to follow her lead without question. Contact front. Thompson suddenly shouted. Blank rounds cracked through the air as instructors playing enemy soldiers opened fire from concealed positions. Rebecca immediately took charge, directing her team with crisp, clear commands. Rodriguez-Williams flanking maneuver left. Thompson suppressing fire. Patterson, stay with me. The mock battle was intense, lasting 20 minutes. Rebecca's tactical decisions were flawless, and her team successfully neutralized the threat without taking any simulated casualties. As the smoke cleared, even Thompson had to admit she'd handled it well. Not bad for a girl, he said grudgingly. Rebecca's jaw tightened. Not bad for a soldier, she corrected. They found the first wounded soldier, played by Instructor Davis, in a clearing 2 miles ahead. The man was conscious but had simulated leg injuries that made walking impossible. We need a stretcher, Patterson suggested. No time to build one, Rebecca replied, studying the terrain, and we'd never get it through the thick brush ahead. I'll carry him. The men stared at her. Davis, playing his role, weighed at least 180 pounds. Martinez, be realistic, Thompson said. You can't carry a full-grown man through miles of forest. Watch me, Rebecca replied. She helped Davis onto her back in a fireman's carry, adjusting her gear to distribute the weight. The first few steps were challenging, but her body found its rhythm. She'd trained for this, pushed herself harder than anyone knew. For the next hour, Rebecca carried Davis through increasingly difficult terrain. Her breathing grew labored, sweat poured down her face, but she never slowed down. Her team watched in growing amazement as she navigated fallen logs, steep inclines, and dense brush without complaint. Jesus, Martinez, Rodriguez whispered to Williams. She's actually doing it. When they finally reached the safe zone for the first extraction, Rebecca gently lowered Davis to the ground. Her legs shook slightly, but she remained standing. Outstanding, Sergeant Martinez, Davis said, breaking character briefly. I've never seen anything like that. But there was no time to rest. 2 more wounded soldiers waited in the forest, and the clock was ticking. Rebecca checked her map, calculated distances and terrain challenges. We have 4 hours left and 8 miles to cover, she announced. The next extraction point is across Rocky Creek, the water's running high from yesterday's rain. Thompson, who had been growing more respectful throughout the day, finally spoke up. Martinez, you've proven your point. You're tough as nails. But maybe let one of us take the lead for the next phase. You've got to be exhausted. Rebecca looked at him, seeing something different in his eyes. Not mockery or doubt, but genuine concern. For a moment she was tempted to accept the offer. Her body ached, her shoulders burned from carrying Davis, and they still had the hardest part of the mission ahead. But she also knew that accepting help now would undo everything she'd accomplished. Tomorrow they'd say she was strong for a woman, tough for her size, impressive for someone like her. The qualifiers would remain, keeping her forever on the outside. I'm fine, she said simply. Let's move. As they headed deeper into the forest, none of them could have imagined that this training exercise was about to become devastatingly real, and that Rebecca's determination to prove herself would soon mean the difference between life and death. For her entire team, the afternoon sun hung low in the sky as Alpha Team approached Rocky Creek. The water rushed past, swollen from recent rains and moving faster than any of them had expected. Rebecca studied the current, looking for the safest crossing point. There, she pointed to a spot where fallen logs created a natural bridge. We can cross there, but we'll have to go single file. Looks pretty sketchy, Patterson said nervously. The young private had never been completely comfortable with water. Crossings, it's solid, Rebecca assured him. I'll go first to test it. She was halfway across when the crack of real gunfire shattered the afternoon quiet. Not the sharp pop of blanks they'd been using in the exercise, but the deep, deadly boom of live rounds. Get down, Thompson roared, throwing himself behind. A fallen tree. More shots rang out, bark exploding from trees around them. These weren't instructors with blank ammunition. Someone was shooting to kill. Rebecca dropped flat on the log bridge, her mind racing. Through the trees, she could see muzzle flashes from at least 3 positions. Her team was pinned down, caught in the open with minimal cover. Martinez Williams shouted, "Can you see them?" From her position on the logs, Rebecca had a better vantage point than the others. 3 shooters, she called back. 2 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and 12 o'clock, approximately 100 meters out. Who the hell are they? Rodriguez demanded. Rebecca's blood ran cold as she recognized tactical gear and movement patterns. These weren't random hunters or locals. They were trained, organized, and they'd been waiting. Military weapons, she shouted. Full order. This isn't random. A burst of gunfire sent splinters flying from the log beneath her. Rebecca rolled, dropping into the creek with a splash. The cold water shocked her system, but it also provided concealment as she worked her way back to shore. Thompson was on his radio, trying to reach base. Mayday, Mayday, this is Alpha Team. We are under attack by unknown hostiles. Request immediate backup. Static answered him, then a voice, cold and unfamiliar. No backup is coming. Thompson, you're on your own. The blood drained from Thompson's face. That's not base command, he whispered. Rebecca reached the shore, soaking wet but unharmed. Her mind worked furiously, pieces of a puzzle clicking together. The remote location, the timing, the fact that their radios were being monitored. This was planned, she said grimly. Someone wanted us out here, isolated. That's impossible, Williams protested. Nobody knew about today's exercise except he stopped, the implications hitting him. Except command, Rodriguez finished quietly. Another burst of gunfire forced them to press lower against their cover. Rebecca could hear the shooters communicating with each other, coordinating their positions. They were being methodically surrounded. We need to move, she said. Now, before they complete the encirclement. Move where? Thompson demanded. We're pinned down. Rebecca pointed toward a steep ridge to their east. Up there. High ground. Better defensive position. And it's the direction they least expect us to go. That's a 60-degree slope, Patterson protested. Covered in loose rock. It's our only chance, Rebecca replied. We stay here, we die. The conviction in her voice cut through their fear. Thompson nodded grimly. She's right. We move on my mark. No, Rebecca said firmly. We move on my mark. I know this terrain. For a split second, Thompson's old instincts flared, but looking at her steady gaze, her calm assessment of their desperate situation, he nodded. Your call, Martinez. Rebecca studied the terrain, timing the enemy fire patterns. Smoke grenade on the left flank. When it pops, we move hard and fast. Patterson, you're on point with me. Williams and Rodriguez, provide covering fire. Thompson, watch our six. She pulled the pin on a smoke grenade and hurled it toward the enemy's left position. The moment gray smoke began billowing, she was moving. Go, go, go. Alpha Team burst from cover like their lives depended on it, because they did. Rebecca led them in a zigzag pattern up the rocky slope, using every boulder and tree for cover. Behind them, automatic weapons chattered, bullets whining off rocks and thudding into tree trunks. Patterson stumbled on the loose rock, crying out as his ankle twisted. Without hesitation, Rebecca turned back, grabbed him under the arms, and hauled him up the slope. I can't make it, he gasped. Yes, you can, she replied fiercely. Stay with me. 50 meters up the slope, Williams cried out and went down. Blood spread across his shoulder where a bullet had found its mark. Man down, Rodriguez shouted. Keep moving, Rebecca ordered. We can't help him if we're dead. But even as she said it, she was calculating distances, angles, and risks. Williams was wounded but conscious, trying to crawl up the slope. The enemy was advancing, their fire getting more accurate as they closed the distance. Rebecca made a decision that would change everything. Thompson, Rodriguez, get to the top of the ridge, set up defensive positions. What about you? Thompson demanded. I'm getting Williams Martinez. That's suicide. Rebecca was already moving, sliding and scrambling back down the slope toward Williams. Bullets sparked off rocks around her as she reached the wounded soldier. Can you move? She asked. Williams gritted his teeth. Shoulders messed up, but I can walk. Good, because we're about to run like hell. She helped him to his feet, then froze as movement caught her eye. One of the attackers had flanked them, emerging from behind a boulder barely 30 meters away. His rifle was swinging toward them. Rebecca drew her sidearm and fired in one fluid motion. The attacker dropped, but his dying reflexes triggered a burst from his automatic weapon. Rebecca felt fire tear through her left side as bullets found their mark. She stumbled but didn't fall. Move, she shouted to Williams. Together, they struggled up the slope as more gunfire erupted below. Rebecca could feel blood soaking her uniform, but adrenaline kept her moving. Behind them, angry voices shouted orders in the gathering dusk. At the ridgetop, Thompson and Rodriguez had found good positions among the rocks. Rodriguez was treating Patterson's ankle when Rebecca and Williams arrived. Jesus, Martinez, you're hit, Thompson said, seeing the blood. It's not that bad, Rebecca lied. The pain was incredible, but she couldn't show weakness now. Her team needed her. How many rounds do we have left? She asked. They did a quick inventory. Not much, maybe enough for one more firefight, if they were lucky. They'll come up after us, Williams said, wincing as Rodriguez bandaged his shoulder. We can't hold this position for long. Rebecca nodded, studying the terrain below. In the fading light, she could see their attackers regrouping, preparing for an assault on their position. Who are they? Patterson asked. Why are they trying to kill us? Rebecca had been wondering the same thing. Military weapons, professional tactics, knowledge of their exercise schedule, and ability to monitor their communications. It all pointed to one terrifying conclusion. Inside job, she said quietly. Someone at Fort Harrison wants us dead. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. If command was compromised, no help was coming. They were truly on their own. But why? Rodriguez asked. Rebecca thought about the past months, the missions she'd been on, the intelligence she'd seen. There had been rumors, whispered conversations that stopped when she walked by, classified documents that seemed to disappear. I think I know, she said slowly. But right now, it doesn't matter. What matters is staying alive long enough to expose whoever's behind this. Below them, shadows moved among the trees. Their attackers were beginning their assault on the ridge. Here they come, Thompson said grimly. Rebecca checked her weapon one last time. Her side was on fire, and she could feel blood seeping through her makeshift bandage. But her hands were steady, her mind clear. Remember, she told her team, we don't have to win, we just have to survive long enough to get the truth out. As the first attacker appeared on the slope below, Rebecca sighted down her rifle and prepared to fight the battle of her life. She had no idea that this was just the beginning, and that before the night was over, she would be tested beyond anything she had ever imagined. The attack came at dusk, when the dying light created confusing shadows. Among the rocks, Rebecca counted at least 6 figures, moving up the slope, using tactical formations that confirmed her worst fears. These weren't random criminals or foreign agents. These were American soldiers, trained at the same bases, using the same techniques. She knew by heart. Target left, she whispered to Thompson, who was positioned 5 meters to her right. Her rifle cracked, and one of the climbing figures tumbled backward down the slope. But return fire was immediate and devastating. Automatic weapons raked their position, forcing them to press flat against the rocky ground. They've got us outgunned, Rodriguez called out, his voice tight with fear. Rebecca's mind raced through their options. None of them were good. They were outnumbered, low on ammunition, and had wounded team members who couldn't move quickly. In a straight fight, they would lose. But Rebecca hadn't survived 3 combat tours by fighting fair. Patterson, she called, to the injured private. How's that ankle? Painful, but I can move if I have to, he replied. Good. In 60 seconds, you and Williams are going to start moving north along the ridgeline. There's an old logging road about half a mile that way. Stay low, move quiet. What about you? Williams asked, his shoulder wrapped in a makeshift bandage. Rodriguez, Thompson, and I are going to give you a head start, Rebecca replied, chambering a fresh round. Thompson understood immediately. You're talking about a delaying action. Against 6 trained killers, that's suicide. It's the only way, Rebecca said calmly. They won't expect us to divide our forces. While they're focused on us, you two can get to that logging road and, hopefully, make it back to base. We're not leaving you, Patterson said firmly. Rebecca turned to look at him, and something in her eyes made him step back. Private, that wasn't a request. That was an order. She had transformed. Gone was any trace of the quiet, underestimated soldier from the morning. In her place was a combat veteran, hard as steel and twice as sharp. Williams, you're senior. Get Patterson to safety. That's your mission now. Williams wanted to argue, but a burst of gunfire from below reminded him of their desperate situation. Come on, Danny, he said to Patterson. Let's move. As the 2 wounded soldiers disappeared into the darkness along the ridge, Rebecca turned back to the slope. The attackers had advanced to within 50 meters, using the growing darkness for cover. Rodriguez, can you handle the left flank? She asked. Roger that, he replied, sighting down his rifle. Thompson center. I'll take right and coordinate. For the next 20 minutes, they fought one of the most intense firefights of Rebecca's career. The attackers came in waves, trying to overrun their position through sheer aggression. Each time, Rebecca's tactical skills and her team's determination drove them back. But ammunition was running dangerously low. I've got maybe 10 rounds left, Thompson reported during a brief lull. Same here, Rodriguez added. Rebecca checked her own weapon, 8 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber. Not enough for another assault. That's when she heard it, the sound of boots moving through brush. coming from behind them. They flanked us, she whispered. The trap was closing. Attackers in front, attackers behind, and nowhere to run. Rebecca made another decision that should have been impossible. When I give the signal, you to move north. Follow Williams and Patterson. What about you? Thompson demanded. I'll hold them here, against all of them. That's insane. Rebecca was already moving, gathering equipment, checking her remaining gear. Someone has to slow them down, give you a chance to reach help. Martinez, listen to me, Thompson said urgently. You've got nothing left to prove. You're the toughest soldier I've ever served with. But this won't work. It has to work, Rebecca replied simply. She had found something in her pack that might make the difference. Two fragmentation grenades, saved for emergencies. This definitely qualified. Go, she ordered. Now Rodriguez hesitated. Sarge, I can't go. Rebecca's voice carried the absolute authority of command. Reluctantly, her teammates melted into the darkness, leaving her alone on the ridge. Rebecca waited until she was certain they were clear, then began her last stand. The first grenade she used to break up an assault from the front, buying precious minutes. The explosion lit up the night, revealing 6 attackers still in the fight. Too many for one soldier with limited ammunition. But Rebecca had grown up hunting in these mountains. She knew how to use terrain, how to move silently, how to make every shot count. For the next hour she fought a running battle along the ridgeline. Using darkness and her knowledge of the ground, she picked off targets one by one. Every shot had to count because she didn't have ammunition to waste. The 4th attacker fell when she caught him silhouetted against the star-filled sky. The 5th went down when he made the mistake of using a flashlight to check on his fallen comrade. By the time dawn began to creep over the mountains, only 1 attacker remained, but Rebecca was in bad shape. The wound in her side had reopened during the night's fighting, and she was dizzy from blood loss. Her ammunition was completely exhausted. The final attacker was smart, patient, and very much alive. Rebecca could hear him moving through the brush, getting closer. She had no weapon except her combat knife and her determination to survive. When he finally appeared, emerging from behind a boulder 20 feet away, Rebecca recognized him. Sergeant Major Kevin Walsh, a decorated veteran and training instructor at Fort Harrison, the man who had recommended her for promotion just 6 months ago. Hello, Rebecca, he said, his rifle trained on her chest. You've led us quite a chase, Kevin, she replied, trying to keep the shock out of her voice. Why? Why? Walsh laughed bitterly. Because some secrets are worth killing for. Because you stumbled onto something you shouldn't have seen. Rebecca's mind raced. What had she seen? What classified information had she encountered that was worth murdering 5 American soldiers? Then it hit her. The intelligence reports from her last deployment. The ones about weapon shipments that didn't match official records. The conversations. That stopped when she entered the room. You're selling weapons, she said. Walsh's expression confirmed her guess. Very good. Yes, we've been supplementing our retirement funds by diverting military hardware to private buyers. Nothing that would compromise national security, you understand. Just old equipment scheduled for destruction anyway. And when I started asking questions, you became a liability, Walsh finished. So we arranged this little training exercise to clean up loose ends. Rebecca stared at him, understanding the full scope of the betrayal. Not just Walsh, but others at Fort Harrison, maybe even Colonel Harper. The others, she said. Thompson, Rodriguez, Williams, Patterson. They don't know anything. They do now, Walsh replied, which is why they have to die too. Nothing personal, Rebecca, just business. He raised his rifle, finger tightening. On the trigger, Rebecca closed her eyes, thinking of her father, who had taught her to hunt in these mountains. Of her mother, who had raised her to stand up for what was right no matter the cost. Of her team, who had finally learned to respect her. Just before everything went wrong, the shot rang out across the mountain silence, but Rebecca was still standing. Walsh looked down in surprise at the spreading red stain on his chest, then toppled backward into the brush. Thought you might need some help, Sarge. Thompson emerged from the trees, smoking rifle in his hands. Behind him came Rodriguez, both men looking exhausted but determined. I told you to get Williams and Patterson to safety, Rebecca said weakly. We did, Rodriguez replied. There at the logging road with a search team from base. Real base, not the compromised communications we were getting yesterday. How did you know to come back? Rebecca asked. Thompson grinned. Because you would have done the same for us. Because you're not the kind of person who abandons her team. And we're not the kind of people who abandon ours. Rebecca felt her knees buckle as adrenaline finally wore off. Thompson caught her before she could fall. Easy there, hero, he said, gently. Let's get you some medical attention. As they helped her down the mountain, Rebecca realized that something fundamental had changed, not just in how her team saw her, but in how she saw herself. She had proven something important on that ridge, not just to them but to herself, but the hardest part still lay ahead. The corruption at Fort Harrison ran deeper than she had imagined, and there were people with power who would do anything to keep their secrets buried. The battle for respect was over. The war for justice was just beginning. Fort Harrison buzzed with activity as Rebecca was loaded into the medical transport. Her uniform was soaked with blood, her face pale from loss of circulation, but her eyes remained alert and determined. The medics worked quickly, starting 4 lines and applying pressure to her wounds. 7 entry wounds, one medic reported grimly. She's lost a lot of blood, but she's stable, the other replied. Toughest soldier I've ever seen. As the ambulance raced toward the base hospital, Rebecca's mind wasn't on her injuries. It was on the implications of what had happened on the mountain. Walsh was dead, but he hadn't been working alone. Someone higher up the chain of command had access to training schedules, communication frequencies, and personnel files. At the hospital, Dr. Ellen Morrison took charge of Rebecca's care. A former army surgeon herself, Morrison had seen her share of combat wounds, but what she found amazed her. Patient has 7 bullet wounds. She dictated to her assistant, 3 in the torso, 2 in the left arm, 1 in the right leg, 1 grazing wound to the head. Somehow missed all vital organs and major arteries. It's like she was protected by divine intervention. As Rebecca drifted in and out of consciousness during surgery, she heard fragments of conversation in the hallway outside. Complete security breach. Double quotes. How many others are involved? Need to contain this situation. When she woke up 18 hours later, Colonel Harper was sitting beside her bed. His face was grave, aged by stress and sleepless nights. How are you feeling, Sergeant Martinez? He asked quietly. Like I've been shot 7 times, sir, Rebecca replied, her voice hoarse. Harper almost smiled. Your sense of humor is intact. That's encouraging, sir. About what happened on the mountain, I know, Harper interrupted. Thompson and Rodriguez gave me a full briefing. Walsh and his team are dead. The question now is how deep this corruption goes. Rebecca studied her commanding officer's face. She wanted to trust him, but trust had become a luxury she couldn't afford. Permission to speak freely, sir, granted. How do I know you're not part of it? Harper nodded approvingly. Smart question. The truth is, you don't. But consider this. If I were involved, would you still be alive to ask it? It was a good point, but Rebecca remained cautious. What happens now, sir? And now we find out who else is involved and put them away, Harper replied. But it won't be easy. Walsh had connections. Allies, they'll try to discredit you, make it look like you went rogue. As if summoned by his words, the door opened and 2 men in expensive suits entered. Rebecca recognized the type immediately. Government investigators, probably from the Criminal Investigation Division. Colonel Harper, the older man said, flashing credentials. Agent Patterson, CID. This is Agent Brooks. We need to speak with Sergeant Martinez about the events on the mountain. Harper stood protectively. She's still recovering from surgery. This can't wait, Patterson replied coldly. There are serious questions about what happened out there. For the next 2 hours, the agents grilled Rebecca about every detail of the previous day's events. Their questions were hostile, accusatory, designed to make her second-guess herself. So you're claiming that Sergeant Major Walsh, a decorated 20-year veteran, was involved in illegal weapons sales? Patterson asked skeptically. That's correct, Rebecca replied. Based on what evidence? His confession before he tried to kill me. How convenient, Brooks interjected. The only witness to this alleged confession is you. Walsh is dead, so he can't defend himself. Rebecca felt anger rising in her chest. Are you suggesting I made this up? I'm suggesting that a soldier under extreme stress might misinterpret events, Patterson replied smoothly. Combat can do strange things to memory. What about my team? Thompson and Rodriguez heard. Thompson and Rodriguez arrived after Walsh was already dead. Brooks cut her off. They heard nothing. The interrogation continued for another hour with the agents systematically dismantling her account of events. By the time they left, Rebecca realized she was fighting more than corruption. She was fighting a cover-up. Over the next few days, as Rebecca recovered in the hospital, the official story began to take shape. According to Sid, Walsh and his team had been conducting an unauthorized training exercise when they encountered a group of armed poachers. In the ensuing firefight, Everyone except Alpha Team was killed. Poachers, Rebecca said incredulously when Harper briefed her on the official report, armed with military weapons and tactical gear. That's the story they're going with, Harper replied grimly. Walsh is being posthumously commended for his bravery in protecting American soldiers from dangerous criminals and the weapons sales. What weapons sales? There's no evidence of any illegal activity, just a tragic misunderstanding that cost good soldiers their lives. Rebecca stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of injustice settling on her shoulders. They're going to bury this, aren't they? They're going to try, Harper admitted. But they made one mistake. What's that? They let you live. That evening, Thompson and Rodriguez visited Rebecca's room. Both men looked uncomfortable, and Rebecca immediately knew why. They got to you too, she said. Thompson nodded reluctantly. Sid made it clear that our careers depend on sticking to the official story. We saw poachers, not soldiers. Walsh died protecting us from criminals. And if we don't go along with it, Court-Martial, Rodriguez said quietly, dishonorable discharge. Maybe even charges for making false statements. Rebecca understood these men had families, careers, futures to protect. She couldn't ask them to sacrifice everything for the truth. Don't blame you, she said sincerely. You have to do what's right for your families. What about you? Thompson asked. What are you going to do? Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. I'm going to get better. And then I'm going to find evidence they can't ignore or suppress. Rebecca, Rodriguez said urgently. These people are dangerous. They've already tried to kill you once. Then I'd better be more careful next time, she replied, after her teammates left. Rebecca lay in the dark hospital room, planning her next move. The official cover-up was comprehensive, but no conspiracy was perfect. There would be loose ends, witnesses who hadn't been silenced, records that hadn't been altered. She thought about her father, who had taught her that the hardest battles were often fought alone. About her mother, who had shown her that sometimes doing the right thing required sacrificing everything else. A week later, Rebecca was released from the hospital with a medical discharge and a disability rating that would provide her with a modest pension. The official ceremony was small, attended only by Harper and a few administrative personnel. What are your plans, Sergeant Martinez? Harper asked, as they shook hands for the last time. I'm going home to Virginia, sir. Going to spend some time with my family, figure out what comes next. Harper nodded, but his eyes conveyed a different message. Be careful. As Rebecca packed her belongings and prepared to leave Fort Harrison, she made a mental inventory of what she knew and what she needed to prove. The weapons sales were real. The cover-up was extensive, and somewhere in the chain of command were people who would kill to protect their secrets. She had been shot 7 times and survived. She had carried 3 wounded soldiers to safety and fought off 6 trained killers. But her greatest challenge still lay ahead. The army might be finished with Rebecca Martinez, but Rebecca Martinez was far from finished with the army. 6 months after leaving Fort Harrison, Rebecca Martinez sat in a small coffee shop in downtown Richmond, Virginia, surrounded by manila folders, photographs, and financial documents. Her investigation had consumed every waking hour since her discharge, and the picture she was building was more disturbing than she had imagined. The weapons sales weren't small-time operations conducted by a few corrupt soldiers. They were part of a systematic scheme involving multiple bases, high-ranking officers, and millions of dollars in military hardware diverted to private buyers. Walsh had been just one cog in a much larger machine. Rebecca's phone buzzed with a text message. Stop digging or face